In 1845, two British ships, HMS Terror and HMS Erebus, disappeared off the face of the earth. They were on a quest to travel and find the Northwest Passage up in the high Arctic, in the Canadian Arctic, and they disappeared. And their fate remained a mystery for a very, very long time. The artist Edward Landseer painted this picture supposedly to spell out the outcome of what happened to the crew of HMS Terror and Erebus. It is called Man Proposes and God Disposes, and it's supposed to highlight the danger of unfettered ambition. So we're going to take a little bit of time this morning to talk about HMS Terror and Erebus and what happened to them. Now, we live in a world of aeroplanes and helicopters, and we possibly don't appreciate just how difficult travelling around the world in the 1800s was. If you were in the UK and you wanted to get to the Pacific, you either had to go round the bottom of Africa and right across the Pacific that way, or you had to go all the way down around the bottom of South America and up that way. And for a very, very long time, the quest was on to see if you could find a shorter route, if you could find a passage through the Arctic ice across the top of Canada, which would take weeks off the transportation timelines to get to the Pacific and the west coast of America. And so the quest was on to see, was there a way through the Arctic ice? And so the British Navy sent two ships, HMS Terror and HMS Erebus, up to the high Arctic. Now, these were ships that had previously explored the Antarctic, so they were well designed for this kind of expedition. And the plan was to go up and literally take 3 years to work their way through the high Arctic to see if the fabled Northwest Passage could be found. Now, the expedition was led by Sir John Franklin on the left, as you look at him, who, as I say, was a very famous and highly regarded and experienced polar explorer, and he was the second in command, and the captain of Erebus was James Crozier, who is the gentleman in the photograph, a very early photograph. And these two men, as I say, experienced polar explorers, led a crew of 129 men to find the Northwest Passage. So you've got well-designed ships, you've got experienced captains, you've got an experienced crew. What could possibly go wrong? Huge amounts of money and time had gone into this expedition. To aid them on their 3-year quest, a new technology was used, and the technology was canned food. They had canned a load of food, particularly meat, but also fruit, to try and prevent scurvy. So with their load of canned food, they set off on the 19th of May 1845. They were last seen in the summer of 1845 in Baffin Bay. And their plan was to try and work their way westward before the ice drew in. As winter progressed, this became an even more arduous task. Literally, men would have to get off the boat and hack their way through the ice. The danger is, of course, that the boats become icebound and trapped and possibly crushed in the ice. However, by October 1845, they had made their way to Beechy Island, indicated here on the map, and the plan was to spend the winter there. And just think about just how tough these conditions would be. Temperatures up to -48, high wind speed, constant snow, constant cold. This was very, very dangerous, very arduous conditions, and these men were there for the entirety of the winter. Once spring arrived and the ice began to melt somewhat, the boat travelled south and it travelled down to King William Island. However, it is here where the trouble really began. The boats became icebound, they were trapped and eventually crushed by the ice. The men spent 2 years on King William Island. So the crews were in trouble. Slowly their boats and therefore their homes homes and their shelter were being engulfed by the ice. By 1848, nearly 30 of the men had already died. The ship was crushed by the ice. The 105 surviving men had no choice but to try and walk across the frozen ice and tundra in the hope of rescue. None of these men were ever seen again. In 1854, 6 years later, an explorer named John Ray was mapping the Arctic coastline and encountered native Inuits who told him tales of lost men wandering helplessly on the ice, falling prey to polar bears, and in some cases resorting to cannibalism. The true story of Terror and Erebus was actually unknown for 170 years. Eventually, however, through relics and notes and scientific studies and finding some bodies, they found the following. Whilst many men's bodies were never found, there were 35 different burial sites scattered around northern Canada. Studies of these bodies showed excessively high levels of lead, and scientists believe that actually the tinned food and the lead solder that was used to seal the cans, rather than sustaining the men, had actually poisoned them. In 2014, Canadian oceanographers discovered the wreck of the Erebus, and the Terror was then found 2 years later. These ships lay undiscovered for 170 years and are now being studied by scientists in the hope that we can find out more details about what really happened to the crew of the Terror and the Erebus. I think in the modern world, where virtually every inch of our planet has been studied and mapped, it's easy to overlook the courage, bravery and heroism of thousands of men and women who explored, who went beyond the boundaries of the known world in an attempt to give us a greater understanding of the world around us, and we perhaps owe all of them a debt. Okay, thank you, school.